Okay, well, I have 1 o'clock on the watch, so we might as well get underway. I want to welcome everyone to the Safe Routes to School Coaching Action Network webinar. My name is Michelle Gully, and I'll be facilitating today's webinar. This call is part of a series of webinars developed by America Walks and the National Center for Safe Routes to School, and the goal of this program is to educate individuals and organizations on topics that may boost the overall success of Safe Routes to School projects across the United States. The National Center for Safe Routes to School and this program have both been made possible by funding from the Federal Highway Administration. Excuse me. Before we get started, I do want to just go over a few administrative details. Please note that all of the attendee phone lines are muted. Due to the large number of participants that we typically have on these calls, muting the phones helps to avoid confusion and cut down on background noise. If you do have a question during the webinar, please use the question and answer box on your computer screen, and as facilitator, I'll read the questions as they come in and respond if I'm able. If you cannot access the webinar program at all but can obviously hear me, please send me an email at mgulley@americawalks.org. That's MGULLEY@americawalks.org. Also note that this webinar is being recorded, so if for some reason you cannot access the program at all, you will have a chance to download it at a later time from www.americawalks.org and www.saferoutesinfo.org. Now, questions pertaining to the actual subject matter of the presentation may be entered at any time, but will be addressed at the end. We're going to try and save about 10 to 15 minutes for questions. We do ask that if you have a question about Safe Routes to School that does not pertain to today's topic, that you please submit those directly to the National Center for Safe Routes to School via their website. And again, that address is www.saferoutesinfo.org. If you were unable to get all of the information down, I know there's a number of different websites, please don't worry, I'm going to post that again at the end of the webinar. So now I'd like to briefly review the agenda. If you'll turn your attention to your computer screen, you should see it up at this time. You'll see we're starting with the welcome and administrative details, which we've already just gone through. Next, we're going to be moving straight into the program, which is fresh ideas from the 2012 Oberstar Safe Routes to School Award Program, surprising partners and program approaches. We have two wonderful speakers for you today, Nancy Pullen-Seufert, who is the Associate Director of the National Center for Safe Routes to School, and Catherine Garvey, who is the President of Safe Routes Chagrin and Chagrin Falls in Ohio. So if you give me just one moment, I will turn the screen over to our first presenter, and we can get started right away. So Nancy, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Michelle. And hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. It's become an annual tradition to have a webinar featuring our Safe Routes to School Award recipients to share their success stories with the goal of leaving you with ideas and inspiration that you can apply in your programs. Some of the things I respect about our webinar audience are really the passion, persistence, and creativity coupled with a willingness to grab hold of a strategy that seems to be working somewhere else and use it for your own program. And you really get why Safe Routes to School is so important and how it can transform your communities. The program leaders and programs you'll hear about today are the epitome of those things. For today's webinar, we really tried to discipline ourselves to hone in on some of the key takeaways to offer to you. So in some of our past webinars, we've really told you kind of soup to nuts about an entire program. And today we're taking something more in the spirit of the season, what I'm calling the Whitman's sampler approach. So if you've been in your local drugstore lately, you know it's that time of year where those little sample boxes of chocolates are out, the yellow ones. So that's really kind of how we're going to do things today. We're just going to dip in and give you some highlights about partnering and unique approaches that we've learned about. When the Oberstar judging panel reviewed this year's award applicants, the ones that rose to the top shared the characteristic of having non-traditional partners and particularly innovative solutions to the challenges they faced, while also demonstrating results. We also know that given changes in federal funding, it will be more important than ever to have a local broad base of support for sustaining Safe Routes to School, making this a timely topic, we think, for the focus of this webinar. So here's the plan for our time together today. Just sort of expanding on what Michelle already told you. I'm going to give you a little background about the Oberstar Award, and you'll get to hear from the program leader of this year's Safe Routes to School Award recipient, Catherine Garvey. and I think you're going to get a lot out of hearing her story. Before I turn it over to Catherine, I've got the pleasure of sharing some of the takeaways from 3 programs that received special recognition as part of the Oberstar Award program this year. But backing up for one moment and telling you a little bit more about the Safe Routes to School Award. It's named for James L. Oberstar, the former chairman of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee and former U.S. representative for Minnesota's 8th Congressional District, to honor his dedication to American school children as the pioneer for the federal Safe Routes to School program. Mr. Oberstar sponsored the Safe Routes to School legislation in Safety Lieu. Every year, the Safe Routes to School Award recognizes a particular type of accomplishment. In 2012, the Chagrin Falls, Ohio Safe Routes to School program earned the Oberstar Award for its broad, deep, and really creative approach spanning engineering, enforcement, education, encouragement, and evaluation. This year, for the first time, the judging panel also identified 3 programs that they thought deserved special recognition. And those are the ones you see listed here: the Brightwood Walking School Bus Program in Springfield, Massachusetts, the City of Tacoma Park, Maryland Safe Routes to School Program, and the Corrales Safe Routes to School Program in Corrales, New Mexico. Because of time constraints, I'm just going to be highlighting some of their program challenges, partners, and solutions in the hope that you'll hear some concrete tips that might work in your community. And I particularly want to express my thanks to the program coordinators in each of those communities who were very generous with their time and taught me a great deal about the amazing work that they're doing. So I'm going to jump right in by talking a little bit about the Brightwood Elementary School Walking School Bus Program, which is led by Karen Pullman. They now have 2 different walking school bus routes that run Monday through Friday with 130 kids. Brightwood is in Springfield, Massachusetts, which ranks 12th in the nation for violence and is one of the poorest communities in the state. And Karen's role is the community health director at a school-based clinic. So some of the challenges that her community was facing were specifically around parent concerns about children being exposed to sex offenders and violence along the trip to school. At the same time, recognizing the need to provide opportunities for physical activity for students. And the school was a low-performing school, so there were a lot of competing priorities going on in order to support the school in all the ways that were needed to best serve its students. So what did Karen do? Karen pitched the walking school bus as a way to address lateness and absenteeism among students. And as part of that, the walking school bus was built into the school's official turnaround plan. So this also meant that teachers could lead the walking school buses. Karen also joined forces with a community policing initiative intended violence and gang activity with a strong focus on engagement. And she proposed a walking school bus solution. So hooking on to policing priorities got media attention, including national level attention in New York Times and 60 Minutes. This also had a effect in that it led to concrete offers of a local bank, a health clinic that donated scarves, mittens, and umbrellas for students, particularly helpful on cold winter walking. So I'm attempting to advance my slides here, and I appear to be frozen. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you about some of Karen's advice that what kinds of key information would you share with programs that perhaps are facing some of the similar situations that you were. And one of the things that she said is, it's really important to communicate and to be consistent, and sort of thinking about that in 2 different ways. One is the fact that everyone has their own agenda. All partners, all potential stakeholders have their own agenda, and you need to show how you're consistent with your program and worth their time to be part of it. And at the same time, parents and partners need to know that the walking school bus will be running every day and that they can count on it. Second, she said, no matter how slowly things are going, keep the faith. And she pointed out the fact that building interest and credibility can take time, but if you try to move too fast, things then can stall out, and sometimes that causes even more work when you have to go back and repair credibility. And she also said she thought a real benefit was getting as many partners involved and having a very simple ask for them, and that ask is to ask them to help you get the word out. She said it's not just about money, it's about getting the word out about what you're doing. And some of the partners that she thought had been most important for them were law enforcement, healthcare, United Way, public health, and she also pointed out that it had been really valuable to have multiple access points into the school system. I've included Karen's contact information on an upcoming slide, which I may or may not be able to reveal to you at this time. And I apologize again. For some reason, I'm getting a delay with my slides. So I'm going to push on for the moment and talk to you about the second program, which is in Tacoma Park, Maryland, and it's led by Lucy Nair, who works for the City of Tacoma Park as their part-time Safe Routes to School coordinator. For those of you who are not familiar with where Tacoma Park is, it is within commuting distance of Washington, D.C. And her program has been 5 years running strong and really is a comprehensive program. It addresses all 5 E's, and it also includes 5 schools, 4 elementary and 1 middle school. And when she and I were talking a little bit about some of the challenges that she encountered, and I'm going to pause here for a second and just point out to you that Brightwood Walking School Bus Program, this is Karen's email address in case anyone wants to be able to ask her more questions. And Michelle is going to show you all this contact info at the end as well. Okay, so back to Lucy in Tacoma Park. Some of the challenges that Lucy was facing were ones that I think are really broadly identifiable. She was struggling to get buy-in with the schools. She realized that parents really did care about being able to encourage their kids to walk and bike to school, but many parents had multiple jobs or they were working shift work and simply couldn't accompany their kids on the trip to school. And she also felt like she had to keep sort of re-explaining what Safe Routes to School is, and she ended up feeling like she was kind of spinning her wheels when she really wanted to be focusing on building a reputation for the program instead. So her goal was around trying to increase safe walking and biking and to really focus on building a recognizable brand for Safe Routes to School and establishing school-based safety education. So I want to tell you about 2 of the things that she did, among many. One is putting together a Safe Routes to School 5K challenge. So this is actually part of a year-long walking and running program that culminates in a citywide 5K race, walk, and youth and fun runs. So some of the benefits that Lucy saw to doing this is that it got her access into the schools. She was able to use walking club meeting times to do pedestrian safety education. It also really got buy-in and involvement from the PTA. PTA helped serve on the race committee. And at the same time, Lucy was able to say to them, hey, the money that we earn from this 5K, we're going to turn around and give you a check. And the funds that went to PTA, a portion of it had to be spent on ped bike safety and on health. So we kind of have come full circle here. And, as Lucy said, she pointed out, once you hand PTA a check for thousands of dollars, everything changes. And, now that this 5K has been going for several years, in its most recent event date, it attracted 800 people and 60 volunteers. So it's a huge effort. Second strategy I want to touch on was something called the Shred the Streets event. And this was really focused at the middle school and based on something that the principal observed, which is that there were a lot of students who were skateboarding to school. And Lucy wasn't sure that Safe Routes to School should get involved just based on sort of safety concerns about skateboarding. And she said, you know what, if we emphasize the importance of wearing a helmet, then there's a really nice marriage here. It's a really could be an important opportunity for us to reach these kids. So some of the key pieces of her strategy, one is she said, I had a young intern who was able to make an edgy, really appealing flyer that was going to appeal to our target audience. And then she secured some sponsors that were appealing for her audience as well. And the way that they set up the event is that they had someone from law enforcement talk about what the rules were in terms of where kids could skateboard, and was able to sort of say to the kids, hey, follow the rules and we won't bother you. They also had a speaker who was a skateboard park designer, which they thought would be of interest to the students, but at the same time, part of the skateboard park designer's message was, hey, I wear a helmet and you should wear one too. So the kids got a chance to engage in some dialogue, and they also got time to skate. They expected to get about 30 students, and they got 140, so the turnout was far exceeded what they anticipated. And there's been some further impact from that event. One is installing storage racks just to meet the needs of skateboarding students, and the fact that students and parents really appreciated it, and they've requested to do a similar event again. So when I asked Lucy, what are your secrets, Lucy? How can other communities have some of the success you had? Two things that she told me is, number one, she saw real value in being able to stick with the same schools over time. And she acknowledged that not everyone gets the benefit of being able to do that. In her case, she really saw how she was able to grow trust and access to the school and over time, and that doing the parent survey and reading the comments gave her real insights about what parents thought was necessary, and it also gave her an opportunity to take action on some of those things. And the result, of course, is that the parents felt heard, and they were more interested in being part of the broader efforts going on. Lucy's email address is right there, and again, Michelle will have it at the end of the presentation as well. So let me turn to the Village of Corrales Safe Routes to School program at Corrales Elementary in New Mexico. Laura Montoya is the co-champion there, and her efforts were originally funded through a Safe Routes to School project, and right now she's working on a voluntary basis there. Just to orient you a little bit, Corrales is about 30 minutes north of Albuquerque. It's a town with a population of about 10,000 students. And right now, she has a walking school bus program that operates 3 times a week on 3 separate routes. So how did she do that, particularly given that she was facing some challenges at the get-go? Two of the big ones was that there was an abduction of a student while walking to school, which of course everyone in the community took very seriously, and had some concerns about then wanting to promote further walking to school. And also lack of infrastructure. The school sits on a state highway, so in terms of safe routes for walking and bicycling, this presented a real challenge. So one thing that Laura and the Safe Routes to School program was able to do is something that's kind of unique to the Southwest. She was able to put together a use of ditch banks, also called arroyos, to avoid being on the main streets. And she was able to make routes that allowed the students to come from town, and also an after-school route that allows them to access the rec center and the library. Her second strategy was very early on engaging elected officials for Walk to School Day and creating very visible support for walking to school. This was particularly helpful because the legislators that got involved had students who went to the school, so they had the parent credibility as well. So how does she make this walking school bus happen? And she really talked about the importance of having a strong volunteer base. And in her town, she said Kiwanis has been key for that. And they have 15 to 20 Kiwanis volunteers that she says the parents know who the volunteers are, and that gives a level of comfort. And that Kiwanis has also been a conduit for them to other clubs to help them with other kinds of things. With the ditch bank route, there are some street crossings that the students need to do, and EMS has been instrumental in helping make their way with those crossings. She also, as I mentioned, has an after-school program, an after-school walking club on one of the days, and accesses the library and the rec center in order to make that part of things happen. So the Walking School Bus program really has grown. Initially, it began as just once a month, and then twice a month, and now weekly. And Laura really pushed for weekly because she said, parents need to be able to count on it. They need that consistency. So when I asked her what kind of advice she thinks would be helpful for other communities, is she said, figure out what people want and leverage it. She just gave one example of that, and she said, I figured out really quickly that parents love to see pictures of themselves with their families walking, and the village has a very active Facebook page. So she learned quickly that other parents wanted to see their pictures too, and so the more she was able to give visibility to the students and parents who were out walking, the more it encouraged other families to want to be part of things. Giving incentives to kids, I know a lot of you think a lot about this. Some of the kinds of things that she gave out were pool passes, library loans, and then you'll see here a picture of a couple of bicyclists and a dog. And so getting to walk on the walking school bus route next to Laura's dog is also a major incentive. And third, she said, go with the flow. See what works for your community and try to capitalize on it. One example she gave is that some students weren't going to be able to participate in her after-school walking club because parents weren't able to pick up the kids directly afterwards. And so she said, no problem. Once the walking club is over, I will walk your kids to the aftercare location. So she really was able to have a lot of flexibility in terms of trying to work with barriers as they were encountered. Here's Laura's contact info also at the end of our presentation. So now, before you hear from Catherine about the Safe Routes Chagrin program, I wanted to mention some of the barriers that they faced. And one was a lack of sidewalks, and particularly with the topography and the layout of the town, this is particularly important because the town is divided by a river. And for students who live opposite the school, this presents a particular challenge when there are no sidewalks present. Second were concerns about personal safety. The town had reports of attempted abductions on the trip to school, as well as anecdotal reports of students being offered drugs. And this was happening just as the Safe Routes program was ramping up. And when you hear from Catherine in a moment, she's an optimist. And one of the things she said to me was, well, on the bright side, this actually helped, these personal safety concerns helped get the attention of the school board, and they were able to leverage that. Third, the two schools that she's going to talk about both had policies banning biking to school, and they also faced some real traffic safety concerns. Chagrin Falls has a lot of tourist traffic, so these are folks who don't know where to expect students and are more likely to be speeding and potentially lost. They also had some routes that students wanted to take that used cut-throughs that were unapproved by property owners, and this was causing some conflict with property owners. And at the same time, students were crossing mid-block instead of walking a little bit further down to a traffic signal. And Catherine knew that they would have to find ways to address these safety concerns if they were going to really have a successful Safe Routes to School program. So it's now my pleasure to turn it over to the leader of this year's Oberstar Award program, Catherine Garvey, president of Safe Routes Chagrin in Chagrin Falls, Ohio. The program's efforts have increased walking and biking to school from 17% of students in 2009 to 26% in 2011. As one of the Oberstar Award judges observed, this program has it all. We asked Catherine to talk specifically about some of the partnerships she's developed that have contributed to her program's great success. Over to you.
Thank you, Nancy. Nice to be here with everybody today. Hopefully everybody can see my slides. As you know, I'm Catherine Garvey, and really I'm honored to be asked to represent our program. You'll see in a couple of slides here that we really have a large committee working on our Safe Routes to School program, and I'm really honored to be the one asked to represent that entire community effort today. Up in the spider web here is our chicken logo, part of our branding of our Safe Routes to School program. When we launched, we had a "Why Did the Chicken Cross the Road" joke and coloring contest, and it really took hold, and the chicken has now become our mascot and become a part of all of our materials and helping create that identifying mark for our program. Earlier, you also saw me wearing a t-shirt with the chicken on it from this year's Walk to School Day. So we have a lot of fun with that. Specifically today, it's too hard to talk about everything that any one of our programs has been focused on for the last few years. And so I'm really going to hone in on the partnerships that we've developed and some that may be a little bit unusual from those that you might have in your communities. And hopefully it'll spark some creative thinking on your part to seek out some different types of partners based on our experience. So we're calling those Strengthening Your Web. Just very quickly, I'm going to go through a few slides giving you some background. We started, as many of your programs out there did, as a grassroots effort, really a group of parents who came together in 2007. And we were concerned about some activities that we saw with the kids walking to school and got together and started talking about those and exploring ways that we could interact effectively with our school board and with our local village municipality to affect some changes. That's when the Safe Routes to School program was really ramping up, and we're so fortunate to have a strong program here in Ohio through the Ohio Department of Transportation and Julie Walkoff. And we were able to get some funding to do a school travel plan at 2 of our schools. Our focus was on the schools where kids were actively walking. That was our intermediate school and our middle school. Our elementary school actually does not have sidewalks to it, and so we decided to leave that aside for the time being. In 2010, we received our first round of funding from the Safe Routes to School program, including the largest tranche, which included our infrastructure funding for sidewalks that Nancy had alluded to earlier, to help those kids on the north side of town traverse a river and have access to the schools and to the public library. We now have over 100 volunteers from all different walks of life, parents, grandparents, other community members, and we have a steering committee, kind of our board of 17 members, and they're listed here just so you can kind of get a sense of our representation. We have our village government represented as well as our schools, and then many parents as well who devote a lot of volunteer time to helping the program succeed. So thank you to all of those people listed, if any of you are listening today. Every town is unique, but some of the qualities that have really impacted how our program has grown are the fact that we're a tourist town. We do have a couple of waterfalls that go through the center of town, hence the name Chagrin Falls. It is the Chagrin River that goes down these waterfalls. We have a historic downtown area, and we have a lot of shopping, restaurants, parks, lots of tourist activity, and of course we have ice cream shops and restaurants and really nice places for people to visit, not only our residents, but people from out of town. We're a pretty small town, about 4,000 residents within about 2.5 square miles, which, if you think about that, means nearly every resident lives within walking or biking distance of the downtown area. And yet, there's a parking shortage. So clearly, improvements to walking and biking would not only support our students, but would also support our whole community. And I'm sure that many of you have discovered that as well. Here's one of our route maps, and just to give you a little orientation, the green triangle in the center is our Triangle Park. It's really the center of our historic district. Just above that is the blue Chagrin River with the waterfalls. And if you'll notice, just to the right of the green triangle is a square building that says CFIS. That's our intermediate school. As you can see, the proximity to the downtown area is very close. It's about 2 blocks. And so our students who are coming to and from the intermediate school are really going right through the center of town where there's quite a bit of traffic. A little bit further east or to the right is our middle school, which is a rectangular building. Our middle school and high school sit on the same campus, and that building is still within half a mile of the downtown area. To the north of the river, you'll see another little square that says Public Library. And obviously it was very important to us that our students be able to walk to their schools, but also walk to the public library and use that as a resource as well. And that will tie into some of the partnerships that I'm going to talk about in a little bit. The dotted lines are the areas where we currently do not have sidewalks, but sidewalks are planned for this summer to be built. And as you can see, it will be connecting about 140 students on the north side of our town and in a more direct route to their schools. And hopefully that will encourage more walking and biking. Our 4th to 12th grade schools, as I said, are located within a half a mile of town. That gives us the statistics that we got in our original survey starting our Safe Routes to School program, that 66% of our students overall live within 2 miles of their schools, and 35% live within 1 mile, so certainly within walking distance. That's a pretty large majority. I don't know if that's unusual for the rest of the programs out there, but we clearly have a very large population who could be impacted if we were able to encourage and support more walking and biking. At the onset of our program, when we did our first survey in 2009, we discovered that less than 17% of our students were walking or biking to school. And most of them were walking or biking home from school, and that may be a common occurrence as well. That's a little bit harder to get them out of bed in the morning and on their way to school. Another important feature of our community is that we serve several neighboring communities. Our schools serve South Russell, Bainbridge, Bentleyville, and Moreland Hills. Students in those areas are not going to be able to walk to school. They might be able to bike, but the way that this plays in is that these students often want to walk from school into town after school, or maybe they want to go to the library after school, or maybe they just want to hang out with their friends and feed the ducks in our public parks. So it was important for our program to recognize that walking to school and walking to town were really closely related goals. Our programming reflects this. Our Walk to School event is actually called Walk to School, Walk to Town Day, and it's a whole day event that involves both the middle school and the intermediate school students, and I'll be giving you some more details about that in a minute. Some of the barriers we faced are not unique. Lack of sidewalks, which we've talked about, some safety concerns, which Nancy also touched on earlier, so I'm just going to go through these pretty quickly. I will note on the safety concerns that we had done a pre-school travel plan survey just to kind of get a sense of what was happening with the kids who were choosing to jaywalk on their way to school. And with our intermediate school, one of the main sidewalks actually dead ends right into the middle of a street. And so, of course, there's a huge temptation to go right down that sidewalk and cross the street right at that juncture. And we discovered through our survey that about 50% of the students were choosing to do that. So you had students 9, 10, and 11 years old who were choosing to cross a fairly busy road where there really was no designated crossing. And with out-of-town drivers and tourist traffic, it would become even more important for us to help re-educate those kids about choosing a safer crossing so that no accidents would happen. We also deal with a lot of snow up here in Northeast Ohio. We're in the lake effect area of Lake Erie, so that's always a big issue for us in the winter. And of course, like many of you, how do we change habits that people have gotten into over even generations? Some of the things that we're really proud of with our program, and Nancy touched on a few of these as well, so I'll go through it fairly quickly. We increased the number of student walkers and bicyclists by 50%. For example, at our intermediate school, 164 students live within 1 mile of the school, and 132 of them are now walking regularly, which is 77% of our target, and we feel very, very proud of that. We have improved safety. We increased speed enforcement measures with our local police department. We've installed driver feedback signs. Thank you again to ODOT. We just got those installed this fall. And we launched a volunteer crossing guard program. Before our program started, when we looked at the parent survey, crossing guards and safety at intersections were two of our biggest barriers that were identified. As you can see, 76% of parents reported that lack of crossing guards was keeping them from allowing their child to walk to school, and 89% said safety of intersections was an issue. After our program, and this is as of last spring's data, 20% cited lack of crossing guards, and only 53% cited safety at intersections. So we feel like our safety measures really had a huge impact. And in the last survey, 50% said the presence of crossing guards was a major positive factor in allowing their child to walk. So it's a really wonderful success that parents who might have had some concerns before are looking at the fact that they're seeing increased speed enforcement, they're seeing those driver feedback signs, they're seeing the visibility of the crossing guards and feeling much more comfortable about encouraging their children to walk. We also are very proud of the policy against biking has now been reversed. And the major concern there was that the students who were choosing to bike to school would have traversed or would have been involved with other teenage traffic, especially at our middle school campus, where the teenage drivers would be heading into school at the same time as any of our teenage bicyclists. So with the help of ODOT funding and Safe Routes to School funding, we installed a new path that separates the students in a separate area from the traffic, and that was the main issue with our school board and hence the change in the policy. Some of the things that I really want to focus on today are 3 different items. One is our ability to involve students in our programs. That was really a driving factor and has been a driving factor in what we've chosen to do. Some creative educational programs with student-to-student outreach, and new partnerships with different community stakeholders that might be different from ones you thought of before. We wanted to build positive support by representing what the students wanted, listening to them, lobbying on their behalf. Lots of them wanted to walk, so we needed to find out why they might not be given permission to walk. What did they want to see change? We wanted to support the students, reinforce the fun factor of walking and biking to school, and use their influence amongst each other to encourage changes in behavior. Also education, improving safety and health and wellness education, expanding on that safety town concept that many schools have at the kindergarten level to older students, that it is our responsibility in our school district and within our community to expand on that learning experience and help model and teach the kids how to be safe as they get older on their way to school or on their way to town. We also wanted things to be meaningful and not preachy. We wanted to teach the older students how to be safe, but replace a kind of lecture type of assembly or a lecture type material with something that would really resonate with them and be more meaningful. I talked a little bit about our crossing guards. Obviously, improving safety at intersections was a major goal of our program. Adding those crossing guards raised the visibility of the presence of a school, raised visibility of the presence of student walkers. Our guards are able to teach and model safe crossing behaviors, give comfort to parents. And also, we needed to find volunteers, and that encouraged us to kind of seek partnerships in different areas. And then finally, sustainability. Like many of you, we knew that we needed adults to help implement our programs. We needed new sources of volunteers. Our PTO is pretty tapped out. More and more parents are going back to work, where both parents are working. So we needed to really think creatively about how to get other people in our community involved. It might be grandparents or early retirees. We also could use the adults to help raise awareness about our programs. Every time we talk to an organization about a partnership, it's a great way for us to talk about what we're trying to accomplish and engage them in joining us. We needed funds for food and for other programs. And we also wanted to make sure that we would be able to sustain the things that were really working well, like our walk to school event, our bike to school event, our bike rodeo. And I just want to say that as goals can lead to new partners, some of the goals I've just talked about led us to new partnerships, it's also important to keep in mind that as you talk with potential new partners, you may develop new goals or new ideas for programs that will work for both of you. Here's some of the traditional partners, and I don't mean to downplay these at all. In fact, I could talk for another hour about our police department and our PTO and our school principals who've been so incredibly supportive, our local government and our planners, and of course our parents. But what I really want to focus on today is the non-traditional partners. some creative slide work here. So when you're thinking about potential new partners, some things you might ask yourself are, what organizations in my community are interested in reaching out to kids? What are some of the influential groups in my community? What are their goals, and do they align with Safe Routes? This might include medical offices or hospitals, a historical society in our case, your local chamber of commerce, your public library. For us, one of our major partners, and I've alluded to this a little bit previously, is Student Council. We felt it was very important to involve students in our programming. We were fortunate enough that at one of our first planning meetings, the middle school advisor to Student Council happened to be there just as a parent and asked some really great questions about why we weren't considering reaching more directly to the students to have them be more involved in planning our Walk to School event. So with her assistance, we went to Student Council and talked about what we were trying to do, and they were so excited that they wanted to adopt this as a formal middle school event. And they put together a group of kids to help plan, decide on what the prizes should be, come up with different contests that would happen that day. They did all of the announcements and the advertising for the event. And ours is really fun. In the morning, the kids are actually encouraged to form teams. And the photograph you see here is one of our winning teams where they showed their spirit by coming up with T-shirts that reflected their spirit. We've had students dress up as bananas or other types of things. But you can see that they get really excited about participating, and then the event resonates more with them because it's their event. This year, our intermediate school student council became involved in our Walk to School event as well. And our high school student council has become involved. We're working right now on a teen driving outreach program for this spring, and we have high school student council members on that team. Our high schoolers also help as volunteers, and they can earn community service hours. And they did a program with a group called Earth Day Coalition on environmental outreach, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. One of our other partners is our local theater. This might be a little bit unique to Chagrin, but I would encourage you to think creatively about your high school drama department or any type of community theater that you have. We wanted to address our safety information that was getting out to the kids and make sure that we were being creative and coming up with something that would really resonate with them instead of kind of a preachy type of lecture. So we worked with our community theater that has a program they call Accent on Youth, where they engage student actors to develop a customized skit for our school. We've had this program now for 3 years running, and it's been incredibly successful. Each year, the topic is always related directly to walking and biking to school, but also might have some ancillary topics as well. This year we wanted to talk about student behavior while they were in town. We had heard from some of our merchants that they maybe really weren't enjoying having students in their shops. The students weren't necessarily behaving as good customers. And so with some of their feedback, we were able to create a skit to help kind of bring that message home to our students, that how you behave in school and how you behave on your way to and from school are equally as important. Very fun, and the last few years the high schoolers even came up with a song at the end of the skit. So just really neat stuff. And this actually, I think there's some clips on our website if anybody wants to see that later. Environmental groups are potential new partners. I mentioned Earth Day Coalition. Earth Day provides education. They are trying to inspire leadership and encourage action for a healthy environment. They sponsor something called the Student Environmental Congress, where they encourage high school students to come up with an environmental program. It might be an outreach program or an educational program. And then they actually have a statewide competition that they can compete in. Don Wrench, who's in this picture here with the students, came up with 3 different programs with our high school students, and they presented that project at a statewide conference as well. And here's, this is a scavenger hunt that was presented at our Walk to School event, and the kids are being encouraged to look through the park for items from the environment, and then she's talking with them about how being active and being healthy are good for the environment and the things that we can enjoy in our surroundings. Our public library has been a wonderful partner for us. Many public libraries have a mission of community outreach. They will have children's librarians who help come up with programs specifically for younger children. And then we also have the Friends of the Library, who are supporters who can help with funding and volunteers. We had a wonderful time with them this year at our Walk to School event. They came up with a craft, and it was a stoplight that the kids came up with, and they played red light, green light. So kind of, again, another non-traditional partner. And here's our historical society. You can see the web is growing. Not everybody has a historical downtown, but again, I think one of the earlier award communities that was recognized said you have to really look within your own community and look for what's going to resonate with your community. Well, we have many, many people work to preserve and respect our history. Our Historical Society actually has a museum, and our curator does educational programs with school groups. So we contacted her about trying to partner up somehow to combine this love of history with our Walk to School event. And what ended up is a wonderful scavenger hunt. So our middle school kids in the afternoon, when they walk into town, they participate in a scavenger hunt that takes them to about 12 different places around the village. And the Historical Society helps us provide the volunteers at each of those locations. The students have to figure out some riddles and some clues, and once they figure it out, they meet up with the Historical Society volunteer, and they get to learn a little bit of the history of our town. So it taught kids to appreciate the downtown area. They were learning about local history, but it also helped us to spread the word about safe routes to school and what we were trying to do in our community. And we had a new source of volunteers, not only for the scavenger hunt, but also some of the Historical Society volunteers had become our crossing guards. The Chamber of Commerce is worth looking into. We have worked very closely with our merchants, as I mentioned, the skit that I just talked about, and as well as for prizes and things like that for our events. Our Chamber of Commerce group is actually called Your Hometown. It's an ancillary group to Chamber of Commerce. They help us promote our events. They help us get the word out to the local merchants about what we're doing, and have also helped us provide some volunteers. In Chagrin, we have a Dads Club, which is kind of a unique organization. It's a corollary to PTO, but it's just the dads. And the Dads Club has a little bit more leniency in how it funds different things, so it's very appealing to us from that perspective, as well as a whole new group of volunteers who are the dads. Our Dads Club had no regular programs at our intermediate and middle school with our intermediate and middle school kids, so that was a little clue to us that maybe we could find something that would be a win-win to work with them. They're very interested in keeping the members as the kids grow older, to keep those older parents involved in their organization. So we partnered with the Dads Club for the last couple of years on our Walk to School, Walk to Town event. They've provided volunteers for setup and cleanup, as well as a very, very popular tug-of-war event and some funding for food, which was really, really incredibly helpful. Medical facilities can also be a good source of a partner. We're just starting to talk with the Cleveland Clinic right now about helping us sustain some of our programs, and our Community Rec Center. I heard that referenced as well regarding one of the earlier programs, remembering that walking and biking are really year-round activities, so getting the kids to the pool and encouraging them to keep walking and biking in the summer is also very important. With our rec as well, they're looking at a new site, and we've actually been involved in the new site planning and integrating walking and biking as that change is incorporated. Local banks can also be a good source. They have a community focus. They often have local funds available to help support different community programs, as well as a source of ideas for volunteers. You know, bank managers typically know everybody in the community, especially in a small town like ours. And this past year, one of my favorite bank managers was able to find 2 new crossing guards for our program. So that was a little bit fast, and I apologize, but I'm keeping my eye on the clock here. This is a stronger web of partners. We're looking at the non-traditional along with the traditional. Hopefully this has given each of you some ideas of potential partners in your community to at least start the conversation. Very quickly here, some of my personal tips on courting a new partner. Personal connections are really best. If someone in your group already has a contact with that organization, that's really the best way to initiate discussions. Explaining how your mission might align with theirs, brainstorming, be open to new ideas as you have that first introductory meeting. Try to find a champion within that other organization who really wants to work with you. Seek a win-win. What are their goals? What is their mission? How does it then mesh with yours? Invite them to attend or observe first. For example, with the Cleveland Clinic, we're just starting to talk with them, and so we invited them to come out to our Walk to School event this year just to get a sense of what that's all about. Start with a small project that you know will be a success. That's always a good thing to do. Not rushing, planning ahead. Creating a true partnership. And one thing we found is essential is to have one of our team members be the coordinator with our new partner so that they know they have a point person. There's really clear communication and really one person on each side then of that partnership, both people working to make it a success. And make it easy to say yes. Spoon feed as much as possible, especially when you're just getting started with a relationship. We want to keep it positive and make it really easy to go forward. Like any long-lasting marriage, you want to start with the end in mind. What does a long-lasting relationship look like? Where do you want this to be 5 years from now? Go slow, build consensus and enthusiasm along the way. Always discuss what's working and what's not. This has come up with us several times where I'll get an email or a phone call that maybe the partner organization is ready to kind of move on without us, and I always follow up with a personal meeting to find out a little bit more about what's going on and see if there's a way that we can meet each other's needs and continue the relationship. And so far, that's been a very successful strategy, just being very open and keeping that communication open. Be willing to adapt and change. Always make your partner look good, make them feel good, thank them, and ask for what you need in return. And always remember to have fun. Hopefully we have a few minutes for Q&A.
Yep, we're in good shape, don't worry. That was a wonderful presentation. Let me just take control of the screen here again so I can post everyone's contact information. Okay. Okay, wonderful. Make this bigger. Okay. So, Nancy, why don't I start with you? We'll give Catherine a chance to catch a breath.
Okay.
And let's see. The first question we have is a couple of folks just wanted to know what you meant when you were talking about multiple access points into the school system.
Okay. I think that was when we were talking about the walking school bus program in Massachusetts, Karen's work, and she mentioned, reaching out to the school nurse, but also reaching out to the principal, and she had one other example. So basically, this idea of, don't just rely on one contact within the schools, particularly if you get a no. There might be, another way to get in, somebody else that sees how Safe Routes to School fits in.
Sure. No, I think that's a great point. And one other question that someone had for you, Nancy, was they were wondering if all of the information about those different programs that you talked about, and while we're talking about it, I'll post their contact for folks that are looking for it, if all that information was available on the National Center for Safe Routes to School website.
What a great question. So we have learned so much. We're actually kind of staging that information, and in our upcoming edition of our Safe Routes Matters newsletter, you will see the story of Chagrin Falls, and then in subsequent e-newsletters, you will hear more details about these other programs.
Great. Okay, and that's all I have for you, Nancy. Now, Catherine, moving on to you, one question that came in, a couple of folks actually were asking for a little more information on what driver feedback signs were.
They're the signs that display your speed. Sometimes they'll say your speed is as you're coming down the road. Yep. So it gives the driver that feedback on how fast they're really going.
Okay, great. Okay, and another question we have for you is one person is writing in and they would like for you to explain a little bit more about the Walk to School /town event. Other than the scavenger hunts, do the students have to attend school that day, what time of year it is, things like that?
Okay, yes, they absolutely have to go to school that day. We do ours in October. We found the third Friday of October to be really a sweet spot here. It's just as the fall sports are wrapping up. And I guess maybe it's before fall sports really get. No, fall sports have just wrapped up. And Fridays were great because what we're doing is we're encouraging the students to walk to school in the morning. And then after school, the intermediate school children walk down to one of our parks, and they take part in what we call a fun fitness fair. Those students really as one large group kind of do a parade through town down to the park, where we have healthy food and drinks for them. And I'm so glad this question was asked because I really didn't get much time to talk about that event, and I think it's so indicative of these partnerships. We have asked local businesses that have fitness-related businesses to come to our Fun Fitness Fair and provide what we call a booth, but really it's just a way for the kids to engage with them and learn more about that fitness activity. So, for example, we have a Kuxel Do leader who comes and does Kuxel Do activities, which is a martial arts, with the kids. He's extremely popular. Our local bike shop comes and does a bike slow race with the students. We have several fitness centers. They'll come and do yoga, kickboxing, other healthy types of activities with the kids. And for each activity that the students do, they earn a raffle ticket. And then the raffle tickets are all deposited, and at the very end, thank goodness for our principal, Chris Wolfter, he gets all the kids to settle down and sit down and listen as the prizes are awarded. And we always have our prizes reflect our local merchants as well. So we'll have a small gift certificate to a local shop with the hopes that the students will then, on a separate day, now that they feel comfortable walking into town, that they'll walk to town and use that gift certificate on a purchase with one of our local merchants. So that's our intermediate school. And then our middle school kids, as I alluded, they form teams. And in the morning they walk to school with their team, and the student council presents prizes based on team spirit, best mascot, things like that. By the way, both schools, we do hot chocolate and bagels for them in the morning when they arrive at school. And then the middle school kids will walk with their team into town after school, and really they use the whole downtown area for this historical scavenger hunt. So that they go to several different sites of historic interest, and we give prizes based on which teams finish first and have the most correct answers. They also have prizes that are similar in that they relate to our local merchants, and our student council helps come up with those prize choices as well. So I hope that answered that question.
Oh, that was great. Okay, and here's another question. Someone was just wondering, how important were teacher champions in supporting student involvement with your program? And they comment that they find it hard for students in middle and high school to have time to work on Safer to School projects.
Well, I think very important. At our middle school, having the student council advisors really involved in our program was essential. I don't think we could do it without them. At our high school, we actually contracted with Earth Day Coalition to do our environmental outreach program with those students. So that was one way for us to work with some of the funding that we were able to get to achieve one of our goals of doing student-to-student outreach regarding health and safety and wellness. And I think that's a continuing issue, is finding that champion within the school who will be interacting with the students. Right now we're trying to work on some bike clubs at our middle school and our intermediate school And it's really essential to have the right person in place who really knows the kids, and that isn't always a parent. So keep working on that. I think we're continuing to work on those issues as well here in Chagrin.
Sure. I think that's a great comment. And do you have a couple extra minutes, Catherine? We only have 2 more questions that I just wanted to get through. Should be able to answer them pretty quick, but one person was just wondering what the content of your middle school education component was. And I know this is a concern for lots of folks because they always seem to comment that there's very little out there that appeals to kind of the tweens and teens.
Well, I think critical there for us was involving the middle school kids. We actually have added advisors to our steering committee this year who are middle school students. And so when we look at any of our programs or outreach to the middle school kids, we're trying to get them a little bit more involved, and then that seems to be a really critical element. If it comes from them, it can be very, very strong. And actually one example of how a partnership has led to something kind of unexpected, the middle school students are now working on a scavenger hunt for tourists who come to Chagrin Falls. And so they're working with Historical Society to do an adult and younger child type of a scavenger hunt. I don't know if that answered, if there's a specific type of outreach that you want me to speak to, I'd be happy to, but in general I think the answer is to get the kids involved. It has to be coming from them rather than being top down.
Sure, and I think that's a great answer. And just for to let folks know, for anyone who else is looking for more information on middle school curriculum, we actually have put on, I think, 1 or 2 different webinars on middle school curriculum. So if you go to the National Center for Safe Routes to School website, which I'm going to post in 1 second, then you can go to the archived webinars and find that if you're looking for a little bit more information on middle school curriculum. So just a little plug there for some archived webinars. And the final question, Catherine, and this one is about the theater group that you worked with. And the question is, what other safety skits were done with the drama troupe? Are there other kind of non-preachy safety programs that you have worked on?
I'm not sure I totally understand the question. The beauty of the Accent on Youth program is that they will do a customized skit really on any topic. So what we've done is worked with our school principal and our school guidance counselor at the onset of school each year to identify what the main issues are that they'd like to see us address. Of course, always looking at walking and biking to school, but often weaving in some other things. As I mentioned, one year we incorporated, this past year we incorporated behavior in town. Last year we incorporated some bullying issues, and one of the students in the skit was being bullied on the way to and from school, and so didn't want to walk anymore because of that issue. So I think the beauty of that partnership is that you have so much control over the content, and you could really do a skit on any topic and weave in the things that are most relevant to your program and also to your school.
I think that's great. And like you said, to make it relevant, to make it fresh and fun for the kids to watch. I think that's a great idea. Okay, well, we're a little bit over 2 o'clock, and I guess we should wrap up now. I want to thank both of our speakers, Catherine and Nancy. This was a wonderful webinar, very informative, so thank you again, both of you. And I just want to remind everyone that our next webinar is actually going to be on January 22nd, and it is called Walk Talk, the Safe Routes to School Call-In Show webinar. It's going to be a little bit of a different format than you're used to. We're actually only going to spend about half the amount of time on the actual presentation, and then we're going to spend the other half of the time taking questions from the audience that will be submitted in advance. And we hope that you can all join us. It should be a very fun and exciting webinar. So if anyone has any questions about that, please feel free to email me. My contact information is up there. Again, my name is Michelle Gully. And thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. We hope to have you on with us next month.